We are back
again
with
another video.
And a quick disclaimer: this is not to bash anyone's belief or disrespect anybody. This is all out of love. We're just sharing our personal story.
Yes, our own experiences. That is all.
And that's all. And we're just basically starting from start to finish, and then just what we learned, and that's it. So we'll get right into it on why we left Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, babe. So how did your family come into the religion?
Okay, so basically, I'm like third generation. I was third generation.
Uh-huh.
So it started with my grandma and my grandpa on my mom's side.
Okay.
And they were from Bolivia, so they were Jehovah's Witnesses in Bolivia. Like, I remember my grandma was studying with somebody, and this is a story that she told.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they came to the United States when they got married, and then my mom was born into it.
Uh-huh.
They moved to Pennsylvania. My mom was still in it. She met my dad, started a study with like my dad. Not her, but like one of the elders did with both of them.
Right.
Once they started dating and everything. So then they were Jehovah's Witnesses. They got baptized whenever I was like in her stomach or something.
Uh-huh.
So I like to joke like I was double baptized.
Yeah.
But then once like my mom and my dad met, they brought in his mom, so my other grandma.
Oh, so she was afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She started studying with somebody else after, like.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically how it started on my side.
Okay, on my side, so this is on my mom's side. My granddad's sister had started first. This was like in the 70s, and then my granddad started studying, and he was like in the streets and like Black Panther stuff at the time, and my grandmother was anti-religion. She was not with it, and she noticed his behavior and his pattern started to change, and that sparked her interest. So I want to say my mom and my uncle were both like kids. I don't know if my other aunts were born yet, but they had all became witnesses in the 70s, and then it went from there. All right, our next question is: so how was your childhood in the religion, or just your childhood in general?
Okay, well, actually, my childhood was not bad at all. Like, I loved my childhood. My mom was actually disfellowshipped for a while from the religion. So, like, I lived with my grandma for, like, half the time. Yeah. And when I was with her, I was always going to the Kingdom Hall and everything. So, I still had it kind of instilled in me. But when I would go to my mom's house, like, she was still celebrating holidays and stuff. Yeah. So, I remember having a Christmas where my uncle dressed up as Santa and everything. And we had Christmas gifts. So, we weren't, like, completely in it.
Like, indulged in it?
No, not completely indulged. Not at that time, at least. Yeah. So, that was before I became a teenager. Okay. Where it was like that. And my mom always celebrated like the big holidays, like Valentine's Day, and well, to her it was big holidays. Right, her big ones. Yes, and Christmas and like our birthdays and stuff.
Okay, so pretty normal childhood.
Yeah, I would say so. It was a pretty normal childhood until we got like around witnesses, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't do the Pledge of Allegiance, and you can't partake of all the holiday stuff at school, and you can't hang out with the worldly kids.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
Okay. So pretty similar. My mom was disfellowship when I was born. I think she had been disfellowship once or twice. I don't know. But my granddad being the elder and my grandmother being the pioneer, we were always like around them, and they would take us when my sister wasn't born yet. I was a baby. They would take me when I was a baby, but my mom didn't really, want to be a witness at the time. She's still disfellowship to this day, and she's like regular, but it's something inside her that just stops her from fully, doing everything. Yeah. But our childhood was pretty normal. We got to celebrate, holidays. I got to play sports in school. And
yeah, because that's a big thing. You're not supposed to be spending any like extra time or extracurriculars with worldly kids.
Yeah, so I got to do all the regular stuff. And I wasn't really interested in the religion or nothing like that as a kid. It was too strict, and then I didn't feel like I fit in with the witness kids. Like, they were very like straight and narrow, and I was like, I live on the edge. I like just doing what I consider regular fun stuff the kids do.
I had a time like that, like not so much like living on the edge or anything, but I just didn't feel like I fit in with the kids. It wasn't until I got older. Yeah, it wasn't until I got older where I was like, okay, I could do this.
I think with religion in general, like if your family is Muslim, you're more likely to lean toward Islam, or if your family's Baptist, you're more likely to be Baptist, Catholic, etc. And I think that's just kind of how this goes with pretty much anybody's beliefs. So
any religion, literally.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that you know. And if you're a kid, you're not like searching out for your own religion.
Yeah.
You're just given what you're taught.
Right.
And if they're telling you like this is the truth and you have to follow this and hammering all of that into your head, then that's how you're gonna believe it like for the rest of your life.
Right. Even like childhood being asked, like I remember when I was young, my being always pressured to when you gonna start your study, and it was always a consequence. Like if you don't start your study, you know you're not gonna make it to paradise, and it was like
it was fear mongering, like to the max. But they do that with all. It's like almost every religion that they like do that with.
Yeah.
Because I talk to a lot of people from different religions, and you know they all have such similar beliefs.
Yeah.
They have such similar beliefs, but they don't see it because it's personal to them.
Right. So what's something, speaking of personal, that got you to, you know, they say like make the truth your own. What led you to like, you know, baptism and everything like that? What was that like?
So I got baptized when I was like 16. And we like really started going to the meetings like regularly, and I started having like a really big friend group in the Jehovah's Witness community. And I think through them, like just everybody that I was surrounding myself with, like that's all you talk about is like your spiritual goals, and like you know you're around people who have already gotten baptized, and everybody's kind of pushing you in that direction. And you honestly feel guilty if you're not doing a lot. So at that time I was doing a lot. Like I was going out in service a lot. I was doing all of my personal studies, and with them they want you to study like before your Sunday meeting, before your Wednesday meeting, and then you have to do personal study, and then you do family study with your actual family. You're
studying with your book studies.
Yeah, so that's already and you're studying with your book studies. But the bare minimum, it's like 4 studies that you're already doing every single week. Right,
and then if you're not baptized, you are still a part of everything, but not really. You're like, it's like top shelf, and then it's like unbaptized publisher. Like like for instance, if you're baptized and this person is not baptized, that's a no-go.
Yes, and there's an awful culture. Like, okay, if you're not baptized, they don't try to make it seem this way, but they look at you some type of way because you're not baptized. You know, especially if you're older. Like if you're older and you've been in it for a long time, it's like, well, why aren't you baptized yet?
Right, and people are constantly asking, so when you getting baptized? And that's kind of what kind of led you.
Yeah, because it was I was starting to feel a little pressured, and I remember when I did tell and I felt guilty that I wasn't baptized yet.
Right,
and I like knew that it was the truth, you know, because at that time I totally believed that it was the truth.
Right.
And I remember whenever I told my mom that I wanted to get baptized, she was like, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?" And I remember being so offended, like, am I sure? What do you mean, am I sure?
You usually don't get that. It's usually the exact opposite.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically my baptismal story. How about you?
All right, mine was, I want to say I was 19 going on 20. And in my teen years, like we would go to the meetings sometime. Like growing up, we would do like conventions sometimes, memorials, like the big stuff, but not really regular like that. And then going to the meetings wasn't interesting to me. So all through my teen years, I knew the witnesses, and then I met a lot of great people, good people. A lot of them are genuine people. And it's just like, they was cool, but I'm not interested in it. I want to do what I want to do. So I remember one of my friends was murdered, and then 2 weeks later, another friend was murdered. And I went through a phase where I'm just like, I don't care about nothing no more. And my grandmother, we were always tight, and she would always try to get me to study. So when all this bad stuff is happening, I'm like, well, maybe it's because I never gave this religion a try, and it's a sign saying that I'm doing the wrong stuff with my life. So I'm like, all right. And I start studying with her, and like going out in service, and you know you kind of love bomb, because the main thing you notice at the hall is everybody is so kind and so nice to you, and everybody comes up, hey, and smile, these big old smiles and stuff, and you're not used to it. So it's like, dang, this is different from everything else.
Literally.
And
especially if it's a new face.
Yeah, if it's a new face. And what people don't realize when you start studying, how studying goes, it starts off very simple, and it's like, all right, who is God? Who is Jesus? What's God's name? And it doesn't get to the complex stuff. It only covers like the surface, and you learn to build a trust. Like, these people are genuine, unlike, you know, everybody else. And they teaching me stuff that I never heard before, and they nice about it. But things like what happens if you get baptized and make a mistake, how hard that is, or like judicial committees or disfellowshipping, like these things aren't explained when you first start studying.
No,
and or when you ask, a lot of the times the complex stuff is like, oh, we'll cover that down the line. And by the time you get down the line, you already built this trust up and this bond to where it's like you don't think about this stuff. It's like everything is like, oh, okay, it's rainbows and sunshine.
Literally.
So that's kind of how I ended up getting baptized. A close friend of mine I had made, and I still got love for him to this day. He had just got baptized, and we both were like just like to kick it and do what we like to do. Like he used to get in trouble in school and stuff. And he's like, yo, bro, when you getting baptized, man, I know it's coming up soon. And everybody like kind of pressured me the way I was kind of pressured, like my aunt and them, like, when you gonna join the school? You still ain't joined the school? Did you talk to the brother? And then it was kind of like me joining the school wasn't genuine. It was like, okay, let me shut them up. And then that wasn't enough. So then it's like, when you gonna start going to service? When you going? And it's like, okay, fine, I'll meet with the brother so I can go on service. And it was kind of the same with the baptism. So that's how I ended up getting baptized. But I'll say, like, I was sticking to the rules for probably like 5 to 6 months, but after a while you kind of hit like you just get exhausted.
Yeah. And too, like, just like what you said, it's not always like genuine and from the heart, but they'll like make it seem, they're like, oh, you have to do it whenever you're ready, but also, when is it gonna be? Like, when are you gonna be ready?
It's like pressure.
Yes. And everything that they, like what you were saying with how they are at the beginning and love bombing and everything, and kind of like hiding over all the bad stuff. I just don't like things that aren't balanced. Like, there's always bad with the good, but don't try to hide the bad.
Like, it's all only good.
Yeah, nothing in this world is just like only good. So, and with religion especially, I don't care what religion you are, you know what I mean? There's good and then there's bad to it as well. Right. So, okay.
Think of some things you learned. It could have been while you were studying, or your childhood, or after the fact during your studying as a baptized publisher. What were some things that didn't quite make sense, but you just kind of pushed it over, like, whatever? I'm
gonna be honest. When I first started studying, I can't say that I was critically thinking at all. Like, I wasn't. I was just listening, you know, because I'm like, well, these people must know something. It's written in a book. So
especially when your parents and grandparents, like, we just trust their judgment. Like, if anything was wrong, they wouldn't know.
It wasn't until I got older and started like studying for myself where they would be like, okay, whenever somebody dies, they are just sleeping. That's all they are. There is no soul. There's nothing else. Like, they're just sleeping. They go back to dust. And I'm like, I don't know, because with the experience that I have had in my life, there's just no way. Because whenever I'd have like a family member die or something, like, I felt like I could feel their energy around me. You know what I mean? So I'm like, how are they just dust? But and then they would say, oh, those are the demons. And it's like, it makes you feel like, oh my God, well, why am I having these dreams? Why am I feeling this? Like,
and you just like, never mind, I'm tripping.
Yes. And then the 144,000, like, that never made sense. I'm like, okay, so we take so much of this Bible, like, their belief is that only 144,000 people will make it to heaven, and then the rest of the people will be on a paradise earth. Right. And whenever they would repeat this number over and over again, it's like, that's a pretty small number
compared to the population.
To how many witnesses you guys say you have. Right. You guys haven't had 144,000 anointed people yet? Like, really? Like, because the belief is like, okay, once all 144,000 people pass away, then the new system will come. Right. Right? That's what they... So I'm like, okay, so why hasn't it happened yet? Like,
and the teachings, remember, the teachings changed. It went from... I have to post another video posting details on which publications it were in, but it was like the 1914 generation will not die. It was publications on it, was watchtowers on it, and then they were in study articles. And then what happened around 2008 is these people were creeping up on 100 years old, because it had to be the people that were born in 1914. And what happened is once those people started to die off, they switched the teaching to a new teaching. As anytime a teaching ends up being wrong, they call it, like, we have new light from Jehovah. He gave us a new answer. And that was something that I didn't quite understand. Like, if I say my information right now today, stupid flies, is the truth, and it's straight from God, And then tomorrow I'm like, never mind, scratch that. I feel like I was alone with this belief of like, how did you get that wrong if it was from God?
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, don't worry about that. And it's just like, okay.
And you feel slighted because it's like, okay, you guys said this. Like back in the day, people were selling their houses and everything because they really thought that the world was about to end.
Yeah, 1975.
Yes,
yeah.
They really thought the world was about to end. So they were doing all of these things, and this was coming from the people who apparently have more light than the rest of the people do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So everybody is entrusting like these elders and the ministerial servants, the people above the elders. I forget.
Circuit overseers, and you had district overseers at one time.
Yes, and the people from Bethel, like everybody's entrusting them basically with their life.
Yeah.
And they're selling all of this stuff off just for them to end up being alive for their entire life and dying and not seeing the last days.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Was there anything else that didn't really make sense during the time?
Yeah, but it was more so to their to what they did, like with their judicial stuff, like disfellowshipping. I never understood disfellowshipping. Yeah. Because when they say disfellowship, they mean like shunning. It's basically like how the Amish community, like you are shunned.
Yeah, like so,
not talking. If you own a business, you are not to do business with these people anymore. Like all this, it's crazy.
Yeah, we'll get more into the disfellowshipping. If you don't know, disfellowshipping is if you commit anything that's against the rules of the organization, then you are removed from the congregation. You can still come to the meetings, but nobody's allowed to talk to you. Even your
only
own
the elders.
Yeah, only the elders can talk to you, and your family can't talk to you. If y'all live in the same house, then it's shaky with the rules that they can still kind of deal with you. But other than that, or sometimes if you get disfellowship, the family kick you out the house because now you are part of what they call Satan's world. I think for me, the things that didn't make sense. One was like, I remember when we still had the book study, 1914, like the math it felt like it was like this. It jumped from here to here to here, and it was so complex. I was like, I don't get it, but I mean, it's the truth. So
yeah, you guys must know.
Yeah, and I remember even down the line when I was studying with somebody, I asked one of the elders, I'm like, can you explain 1914 to me? He was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research on it. But next week when we have our study, we'll cover it. But the next week when we had our study, he was like, I'm sorry, I forgot to cover that. But what it is nobody really understands 1914. Like it's very hard to understand. Even the witnesses that come to your door, if you ask them on the spot, they will have trouble explaining how the math led to 1914. And another one for me would be race. So when I was around, I want to say my early 20s, I started to take this interest in Black history because, Jehovah's Witnesses don't teach much about Black history. There, a lot of the witnesses early in the beginning, the early or late 1800s, early 1900s with Brother Russell, there weren't many Black people. It's kind of a European type of religion. And I remember asking my grandmother one time, I'm like, my mom, where did the Black people come from? And she's like, oh, they came from Moses' day. And it just didn't sit right with my spirit, but I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. But once I started to learn Black history and I noticed the first people on this earth were Black people, and I no longer could ignore this in the publications because everything took place in Africa, but everybody is white. Jesus is this white guy, and Peter and Matthew, and it's like, why don't we teach, that we came from Black people? And the answer I always got was, oh, Jehovah doesn't, see color.
Yes.
And
obviously he does. If all the publications they're like all white.
Yeah, and I'm like, so why if it's not important, why did we pick white?
Yeah.
Instead, why don't? And then even like the governing body, like everybody was white, and the one Black guy was there since like 1999. So it's like that was something else that didn't make sense. Now we covered, baptism and all that. So it's like you going up. Where did you feel like you were starting to decline to where your head wasn't in it as much?
Okay, so basically I had gotten in trouble and we had a judicial meeting about when you get in trouble, I made myself get in trouble because I went to the elders and I told them about what I had done. So when you do something that you feel like is wrong and you need discipline over, you go and you tell your elders. Right.
You are pressured. You pretty much, they point out scriptures saying like you have to confess to the brothers and let them pour oil over you. Like it's a must. If if you do something and I know about it, I'm blood guilty if I don't tell them what you did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll let
Exactly.
you finish.
So no, you're fine. So basically, I remember it being a talk about telling, basically telling on yourself, and right after that, I felt like the speaker was talking to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm just getting eaten alive by this guilt. So I went to one of my elders right afterward, and I told him like, hey, I need to talk to you guys. Like I did something bad or whatever. So they hold judicial meetings with you, and with this specific situation, like, okay, the judicial meeting, like the overseers, they're all men. Okay, and they're asking you like really specific details,
cringy questions. Even if you were a 12-year-old girl, you were in there along with these middle-aged men. And
at that time, I was underage, and I was in there by myself with like 1, 2, 3. She was like 3. I think there was.
Should have been 3.
I can't even remember now, but it was 3 or 4. I think it was 4 actually. I had 4. But anyway, there was 4 elders in there just asking me like real specific details about what I had done wrong, and it was honestly creepy, and it made me feel it made me feel like grossed out because my mom wasn't in there with me or anything like that. So and why do you need to know? Like I told you what I did, just and they won't take it for what it is. Why do you need to know like every single little act? Like
and the first thing they ask is, does anybody else know?
Yes.
Because you have to protect the organization and the image.
Right.
And if anybody knows anything, then they get dragged into it.
And they also have to talk about it. So it was like a group of Jehovah's Witnesses that it was like a group of like 3 of us who all had known about this situation. And so everybody got dragged in to talk about it. But anyway, that's when my decline kind of started, because I felt like, they take away your privileges, so you're not allowed to comment anymore. And
it's announced in front of everybody.
It wasn't for me.
You had a private reproof.
Yes.
Okay.
I was privately reproved.
If you're publicly reproved, it's announced on the platform in front of the whole congregation for everybody to know this person did something bad. Yeah.
So there's like levels to it. There's private reproof, there's public reproof, and then there's disfellowshipping. Yeah. So you have those 3 things that can happen to you. Yeah. Usually, if other people don't know about it, then you get a private reproof. If a bunch of people know about it, then you get public reproof.
And it also depends on your elders, because there's situations, I know of people that purposely were not remorseful and they lied and didn't get disfellowship, and that made me question, because my decline happened, I want to say I got baptized in 2013 and I was disfellowshipped 2016, but I talked to my elders like January 2016. I was disfellowshipped on the spot. I had never been in trouble or nothing. And I know people that straight up lied, like I'm remorseful, and they didn't get disfellowship. And here I am, remorseful, talking, and I got disfellowship. And I question, like, well, if you're in these judicials, they basically meet with you, and then they send you out the room. Sometimes same day, mine I had to come back like a week later, and they have a conversation with God Himself, and then they let you know if He forgives you. And that just tripped me out. So when I was disfellowshipped, the thing that I struggled with, I always felt like I had a hard time applying by all these strict rules, and now it made me so depressed, because I feel like, man, what is wrong with me to where these rules are so hard to follow? Like, why me? And now that I'm older, it's like you are teaching young men and women that like each other. You are 18, 19 through your 20s, even as a teenager, we are supposed to like the opposite sex, but you are being forced. You can't even be alone. Like you have
with another person of the opposite sex.
You have to be chaperone.
Yes.
If you and a person are dating, y'all have to be chaperone all the time. So y'all never really getting to know each other, because there's always somebody there, and that right there is what wasn't so natural. And it makes you feel like, man, there's something wrong with me. I'm terrible. Jehovah not gonna forgive me, and that's kind of how you feel.
When really everybody is doing something wrong, but only certain people will go and like talk about it. Yes, because I know so many people who did some bad things. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And they just never went and told on themselves. You know what I mean? But like if they make you feel so guilty, and that you're doing such terrible things. So
and you're gonna be punished for it if you don't say nothing. Now, when I got disfellowship, there were other times that I got talked to, but it was for the silliest reasons. The one time I wasn't even baptized yet, me, my one friend I mentioned earlier, and let me see, it was like 4 of us, all fellas, we hanging out. I'm not baptized. I ain't even got to where I want to study yet. They just know me from being around. And they like, man, let's go to a hookah lounge. So I'm like, all right. So we go to the hookah lounge. It's something like I didn't realize how strong my intuition was until I became older. But at the time, something told me like, man, don't smoke the hookah. So I'm just chilling there, we kicking it. And what happened is, one of the people with us had a twin sister that was dating another brother. And then another person with us had a crush on the twin sister. So,
there was always triangles like that.
Yeah, so what happened is, when the twin brother goes to tell the boyfriend, like, yeah, man, because he had a loud mouth. He actually woke up down the line and never got baptized or not. But he bragging like, yeah, man, we all went to the hookah bar, blah, blah, blah. And the dude heard that the dude that had a crush on this girl was there, so he did something super petty. He like, y'all need to go tell the elders, or I'm gonna tell on y'all. So I'll get dragged into this stuff too. And we all supposed to be friends, and I'm like, now y'all got me caught up in this stuff. And the elders asking me who I was smoking. I'm like, I don't know who did what. And the other friend with us, like, he confessed everything to the brothers. And then that was like the only time I went in real trouble. Like, they couldn't really do nothing. And then the next time was I had some people over and I had some drinks. And I'm like, if anybody is not 21, don't drink. Yeah. So this one super witnessy spiritual girl snuck and drunk some liquor. Next thing you know, a week later, my elders pulled me into the room like, yeah, we hear a regular pioneer was drinking at your house. And I'm like, I'm more pissed off, like, she didn't even say nothing about her going to her elders. And I went off on her when I caught her drinking, like, bro, you're not even supposed to be drinking.
Yeah.
And so that was one time I got, like, kind of talked to. It wasn't nothing major. And then they tried to counsel me because my disfellowship cousin had a wedding. And my uncle and his kids, they all went. Like Lexi said earlier, when it comes to disfellowship, some people are super strict, and some people, like my family, they never cut my mom off. Like, my mom couldn't come to family day at my grandparents on Monday, but when my grandmother had doctor's appointments or all that, my mom was there, or over there cleaning, or over there cooking. Yeah. But yeah, they seen the pictures on Facebook, and they gonna ask me like, were you at the wedding? I'm like, nah, I just happened to not go. But I'm like, nah, I wasn't there. And they're like, we're so glad you didn't go. But that was my only interactions with elders. But
you're you're rehashing memories in my brain. I've like forgotten about so many memories about getting counseled and stuff. Yeah. But now you're starting to bring them back.
You remember this stuff?
Yes, I remember we were at a convention and we were literally hanging out with all witness kids. Okay, so when you go to a convention, you like rent a hotel and everything if it's far away. So we were in a hotel. We were with all these other witness kids down at the pool, and I had a bathing suit on, a one-piece bathing suit. Okay, now. Let's not forget, I am mature, so I do have boobs, okay? But that's it. And there was nothing else that was coming out or anything. And I remember one of our close, like, family friends slid up on, like, my Snapchat and was like, you shouldn't be posting like this whenever you're at the convention and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you want me to wear a freaking t-shirt at the pool? Because I'm not.
You were supposed to wear a whole sweater in there. Like,
no. My mom was so mad about that because she's like, how dare she? Like, you're with all other witness kids. There was kids down there in bikinis and stuff, like, but they get so petty. I forget about how petty they would get about stuff. Like, if you had a dress that was too tight or a little too short, everything was supposed to be, like, below the knee.
Right. It's things like that. It's like part of the decline, and you start to notice stuff like, this ain't the same love I got in the beginning.
I got counseled for having a second ear hole whenever I went to go get my second ear hole piercing. It was just stupid.
Yep. When I got disfellowshipped, it sounds bad, or I felt bad at the time, but I felt this big relief, like, as far as, you know.
That doesn't sound bad, because I felt the same way when they took my privileges away.
Yeah, because it's like, you don't realize you are constantly, like, a lot of therapists that, you know, have seen Jehovah's Witnesses say, I think over 70% suffer from some type of depression, anxiety, because you are always having to do something, and you can never catch up. It's always Bible reading, new publications, studying for this, studying for that, and you don't. And then Saturday morning you get up for service, Sunday you got the meeting, so you don't have any days to sleep in, especially if you have a job. Yeah. So me being disfellowship was like, I get to be me. And then the crazy thing, I was out of my friend group, I was like the 4th or 5th one that got disfellowship. Everybody was back to back, so I got to hang with my friends from the hall, and we got to be ourselves. And out of all those people, I was the only one that ever went back. Everybody else was like, we cool. And I just felt this relief, like I get to sleep in on Saturday.
I know.
I get to chill. I get to just be me. And I got covered in tattoos in that year. And when my grandmother had been battling cancer since 2006, so that was my motivation. Like I got to get back so I could be with my grandmother. And we would still like talk here and there. And then when she was in the hospital, like of course I went to see her, and it was cool. And I want to say I kept trying to get reinstated. So the worst part, when you get disfellowship, they announce it in front of the whole congregation, and it's dead silence. And most people duck that meeting. I had the courage. I went, and not only did I go, I sat in the front row, and I just took it like it's gonna be all right. And I slid. One of my friends.
You went.
Yeah, I went. And the crazy thing, a close friend of mine, he was a lot older. He had been an unbaptized publisher. I don't even think he was an unbaptized publisher. He was a study. He had been a study since the 80s. And I gave him a note and basically let him know, I love you, I'll see you soon, blah, 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 I'm getting announced. And afterwards, one of the elders that wasn't even on my judicial came up and was like, you need to, whatever you gave to him, you need to take it back. I was so pissed, like, bro, you see I'm having a rough night. You gonna come up, whatever. I went on about my business. So
They are shady.
Shady. And it's, a lot of times, you have at least one elder that's like a jerk. And they take it like they need to punish you.
Personally.
Yeah, like if Jehovah's punishing me, why are you? He told me, I kept turning letters in. My third letter, he said, letting you back in 6 months is like letting a murderer off with probation.
Yeah,
and
that's not.
And it's like, I was so upset. I went to my granddad and told him, he said, what? And my granddad's an elder. And he was like, it's going to be all right. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep going to the meetings and it'll be all right. So finally I got reinstated, like right before I did my fourth letter. They just randomly pulled me in the back, like, you ready to get reinstated? I'm like, yeah. So boom, they let me back, and it went on from there. But what I tell you, everybody does not accept you back. When I remember it was a talk one time, they said if you are disfellowshipped and you get reinstated, it's like balling up a piece of paper and straightening it back out. It still got wrinkles in it, and it was like, what's the point of coming back if I'm not as worthy as everybody else?
And that's not how forgiveness works. It's not how they describe forgiveness from God, for one. They don't describe it that way because there were murderers, there were rapists, there were all kinds of people in the Bible that God just allowed back, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or allowed into his arms from the beginning.
Yeah, according to the rules. But I remember like being disfellowship, it would just suck. Like, go to the grocery store and you see somebody that's like, and they treat you like you just not there. And occasionally you would see some people that be like, man, it's good to see you. They give you a hug.
Yeah.
I remember,
or they'll do like a little wave.
Yeah. And then I remember one time walking into the door at the hall, somebody was in front of me and they let the door close behind them. And it's like, why?
They turn like rude.
Some
it's
people
like
treat
you flip of a switch.
Yeah, it's like, dang, I didn't do nothing to you personally. Like, and that's just the culture. But when you come back, some people welcome you with open arms, and some people, you know, they treat you like, man, like, nah, you stained. That's the
bad
truth.
Association.
Yeah, you get labeled bad association. Now I'm reinstated, but now that I'm reinstated, I don't feel the same. Like, I'm not as interested. And I'm trying at first. I started a study back because they kept saying when you get reinstated, you need to start a study again. So I started studying with this elder, and he even said, like, you know, it just feel like you got this wall up, like you don't really fully open up. And I was just like, man, that's just how I am. Now over time, I started to get exhausted, and I'm not really like committing to the witness rules like before. Now I'm just like in the middle. I'll still talk to my friends as disfellowship. Or my cousins and my high school friends, like I'll still talk to them, kick it with them, but I still go to the meetings because I don't want. It was more because I didn't want to disappoint my grandparents.
I was just gonna ask you, what made you go back?
Yeah.
Was it because of that? It was because of your grandparents.
But I didn't realize it at the time because I felt like if I don't go back, I'm gonna die. So it's like I would just go to the meetings because if I miss a meeting, it's like, you know how everybody is. Like, we missed you, we didn't see you.
Yeah.
So eventually, like, the more I started to learn about Black history and stuff, I could not ignore when I'm in these meetings. I'm just like, this is not, like, this part is not true though. Like, Jesus wasn't this white guy. Or all these, I'm like, and I would try to give it some leeway in my head. Like, okay, this person does look kind of light skinned, kind of African. But it's like, no, these people, there's no Black people in here. Like, this is not right. And over time, I want to say after my grandmother passed is when something just clicked.
It was after.
Yeah,
it's because you know how sometimes they tell you that you have to hit like rock bottom before like really waking up.
Yep.
That's what happened with you. Like
Yeah.
I remember when you were going through that.
Yep. When she passed, it was just like she was the one always pressuring me. Like if I'm sitting next to her and my magazine is not highlighted, she's like, "Why you didn't do your lesson? I better see some lines next week." Or why you ain't comment? So with her being gone, that pressure was gone. And then I started to miss meetings. Around this time was like right before COVID. And so once that happened, that's where a lot of stuff fell back. And I remember specifically getting to where I just didn't care to go to the meetings. And we dating at this time.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we were dating at this time.
Yeah,
I remember even us dating. Like, I was going through like the judicial things when we were dating. And I was technically, I was still on private reproof.
Yeah, because that was before I met you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was still on private reproof. And then COVID happened like pretty soon after. And that like really...
That changed for a lot of people. A lot of people ended up leaving during COVID, and what happened with me was all this stuff I kept noticing. And our friend, we call her Mama Shy. She's from a different state. We never even met her in person. Shout out to Mama Shy, but she, I guess, could notice. Like I think I might have like grew my beard just a little bit at the time, but she was like, "Did you go to the conventions?" I was like, "I went to a couple of them." And she was like, "Did you notice how most of the brothers," and she's white, she's like, "Did you notice most of the brothers that gave talks were white? And a lot of these brothers, everybody on the governing body is white, except for one." And I was like, "I noticed that, but I just kind of kept it to myself." And she sent me this link, and I was so scared. It was their regular Pioneer. And so if you don't know, the thing about being a Jehovah's Witness, you are only allowed to get information about them from them. That's it. If somebody say I read something, don't listen. If it's a video on YouTube or something, do not watch it. If it's on Google, don't look at it. That is the number one rule. Do not look at anything about us. It's not from us.
Yeah. And for them, it's for good reason. Yeah.
So you always just followed that rule, but in the back of my mind, I was always curious, like what is online that we're not supposed to look at? And I always was like, I will never look at it though, because I don't want to be crazy like them other people that looked at it and now they don't come back to the hall no more. Mama Shaw sent me this video, and it was about racism in the organization, and I clicked. I don't know what it was, my curiosity, but I just clicked on it, and I just felt this feeling like that first time you watch a video about the organization, you just feel this heaviness, like
you're so
like
scared.
oh no, am I supposed to be watching this? I'm so scared. But at the same time, what I'm hearing is just like. Just mind-boggling. And he talked about the history and Charles Russell and like the racist publications on the things that said about black people. And I'm in denial. I'm like, this not our stuff. So I'll actually look up the old publications, and it matched. I'm like, this is our. And I feel like Denzel on Training Day when he was like, "Oh, you mother effers." All right, that's exactly how I felt. I was like, this why we not supposed to be looking at these videos? Oh, but at the same time, babe wasn't there yet, so we living together at this time,
yes.
and
that was another big thing, like with my elders or whatever.
Yep.
Not supposed to be doing that, but whatever.
Yeah, by this time we moved
we
in
were
together.
kind of didn't care, like
we did what we wanted.
At first, I was the one that like wasn't caring. Remember, we would be because they did Zoom meetings and stuff, and like. Yeah. I would be laying there on the Zoom meeting, and I'm like, "Don't show my face. I don't want to be dressed." And he would be over there like dressed in his suit and everything, and I would just be there like, "Oh my god!"
And I was only doing it. This. I feel like you wanted to do it, so that's why I was doing it. But I was just over. I'm like, all right, let me be a good example, even though I don't feel like doing this. But
I also felt like it was the truth, though. But inside, I was so tired and I was so over it. I just didn't know at the time. Like, I didn't want to admit that at the time.
Yep. And so once I seen that video, it just rabbit hole after that. I started looking into all this stuff and thinking about all the people that left and the stuff they used to say, and it was just like I got bamboozled. But so this is the thing why I couldn't say something to Lexi right away. I was watching Exjw Critical Thinkers, like I watched all they stuff, JT and Lady C, and what they say is the reason you end up kind of waking up is because you realize something ain't right, and you process it, and then you research, and then you realize something wasn't right. But if you just go to somebody that didn't even realize something ain't right, they instantly have been trained. You saying something about the organization, you speaking against Jehovah,
yeah,
shut it down. So I'm like, I can't even say nothing to Lexi. But Lexi's sister was living with us, And I'm talking to her about it, and she's like, yeah, I done seen some videos and stuff too, like.
Because my sister already was like not believing it. She was like over it.
She never got baptized. Mine didn't.
And my mom was like that too. She just wouldn't say anything about it because she still felt like it was the truth and she was just doing something wrong. Yeah. But she had already seen like the apostate videos and stuff and believed that it was not the truth. But same thing, doesn't want to disappoint her family. Yep. Like that's where most of it comes in whenever you're born as a Jehovah's Witness. It's, you don't want to disappoint your family.
Yep.
And when you're coming in it from like being like worldly to the Jehovah's Witnesses, you're getting all that like love bombing and getting treated different. And it's not until like the years down the road where you see like true colors.
Yep. It's not the same love from the beginning. But yeah, once I seen that, and Lexi could tell that something was wrong with me. Like I was just, because when you first find out,
asking,
like it is the feeling when you first wake up. It's shocking. You curious, but you are depressed because it's like somebody just snatched the rug from under your feet and you just lost. Like what is life? Like what's true and what's not? You just out of it. And Lexi could tell, and I was just like, I can't even talk about it. So eventually, I told you, and pick up from there.
I said all the things that a good Jehovah's Witness would say. I'd be like, I was like, no, I can prove it to you. I can prove it to you from jw.org itself. Because you asked me about the 144,000, didn't you?
First was I sent you a picture because you was at work. It said Zion's Watchtower because that's what it was once called. And there was these racist quotes, and you were like, I don't think that's from us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah. That's what it first was.
And then whenever you came home, like I remember we were talking about it, and I was trying so hard.
That's when we got the 144,000
yes,
conversation.
And it was during that moment, I didn't want to admit it to him because I'm like, oh my gosh, he's just looking at bad stuff and he's looking at apostate videos and oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? We live together now. Like all of this is going through my head. Like we have to break up. Like all of this is going through my head. And then I realized that the question that he asked me, I couldn't answer.
Yep, I was like, this is the question about 144,000. I'm like, all right, so in Revelation, is Revelation literal or is it symbolic? And you said
it's literal.
Oh, remember you said it's symbolic.
I said it was symbolic. Yeah. And then you were like, well, why do we take this number literally? And then when you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had this question before.
Yeah,
like, please don't spark this question in my head. Because I remember whenever I had that question, I was trying so hard to push it out of my head because I felt bad for thinking that way. Yeah. And whenever you said it, I was like,
because it's like if you look at it, the scripture goes symbolic, literal, symbolic. So I was like, how did this become? Literally. And from that point, I'm like, this is what I've been watching. And from then on, it woke us up. It's like an abusive relationship. It's like this abusive man with this woman saying, you ain't nothing without me. You'll never be happy without me. You'll never find happiness. Yes. And that woman believes it and she stays even though she's unhappy. That's what it was like. Like a lot of witnesses are depressed, but it's like, this is the best I got and I just got to wait until things get better in this situation I'm in. And once that person gets out and they realize like, man, there's other good people out here. And that's kind of how that was. Like and
there's so much more to this world than all this fear that you've been slamming in my head since I first came. Like they just focus on so many negative things. Like that's what gets the most focus is like all the negative thing that's happening in the news and like just I don't even watch the news anymore because I literally don't care. And
another thing, as far as the news, the organization is in the news a lot, but it's nowhere being taught on the platform. It's not on the website, but they are in the news all the time. And these bad things that you are being told is out in the world are also in there too. And once you see this stuff, like some people go to church after us. We don't have a religion. We believe in spirituality, but we're just free living our lives. And thankfully it happened when we were young. There are a lot of people, like in the last couple years, they say over 50,000 people have left the organization. And you notice before we left, remember they had to start merging kingdom halls together? Yep. And you don't even think to question this stuff, but you remember at one point these seats, I remember attendance being 200 people. Yep. And over time, it just got empty and empty. And you look around and next thing you know, they merged all the congregations and they start selling property. And then the conventions went from 4,000, 5,000 to 2,000. And you don't even realize like people are leaving And with technology and things like that we got now, a lot of people are
it's just getting spread everywhere.
Yeah, people are looking up this information,
and I think it's happening like throughout the whole earth with like multiple religions, like different like cult like religions and things. It's happening to other people too, you know, and just I don't know, it's like I don't regret being a Jehovah's Witness, because if I never was, I don't think I'd ever be here. You know what I mean?
We would have never met.
Yeah, that part too. And we wouldn't have the minds that we do now, because I feel like it expanded our thinking so much that there's nothing that can be put in our face that we're not going to critically think about.
Right,
like,
we question everything.
Yes, we literally question everything now. Like, we do our homework.
Yeah,
okay?
We do FIBJ, man, do your homework.
Do your homework.
It hit different. Yeah, so we'll do some update on just more detail, but that's just our story on how we got here, and we are happy. I know witnesses that may watch this be like, they not happy. They just Satan confusing them to make them think they happy. No, we are happy. Like I feel free. I get to be myself. I've been wanting to have my hair, grow my hair out, and I had my ears pierced when I was in Disfellowship. When I came back, I would only wear them like
every once in a while,
away from the hall when I'm out of town. Like I got my beard, I got my hair, I don't feel bad about having tattoos showing.
Me
Babe
neither.
got tattoos now, piercings.
What?
But they think a lot of us went crazy once we leave the organization. Like, no, we just are being who we always have wanted to be. A lot of people want to be musicians and doctors and all these other things, but they following these rules and suppressing who they truly want to be.
I remember even when I was telling them that I was going to be a travel nurse, it was like, you sure you want to do that? Yes, I do. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to do that. I want to do yoga. I want to drink tea. I want to get tattoos.
Yeah, I want to be
all
myself.
These things,
and you know, it's crazy. A lot of people want to do that stuff, but they waiting on to say so. If right now they said it's okay to get tattoos, a lot of witnesses will go get tattoos and not hidden ones like up under here.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of witnesses have tattoos and they hide them.
Yep, they hide them. If they say, right now, if they said that everybody can grow a beard, everybody will have a beard. But it's good to not have to wait for somebody else to let you know that they talked to God and got an answer and gave it to you.
Literally.
Yeah,
and that their answer is better than yours. Yep. Because they're the only people that can talk to God, not you.
Yeah, because you being taught. I'll get into details like family reaction. My family is like, I don't even think they know that I'm this far as not believing everything. They just know I don't go to the hall no more.
Yeah.
Because I laid the groundwork like this with my family. I'm not into that. I just want to be myself. I respect y'all beliefs. I'm not trying to share mine with y'all. Can y'all stop sharing it with me? And once my family would have been more strict when my grandmother was still around, but once she passed, everybody just is like, everybody talks to my mom like regular now.
Yeah.
Like things change.
Things definitely do change. And you know what? I feel like that was a gift from your grandma. Like your grandma gave that too.
I believe that. I believe in the afterlife, and I believe my grandmother looked at the situation like, I drug you into this and now I'm dragging you right back out. Because I'm the only one in the family that had like that really special relationship with her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So shout out to my mom, Karen Elaine.
Shout out to Miss Karen.
Yep. But yeah, we'll be back on the next video. Stay tuned. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch y'all next time.